Just a few quick reminders in case you see this again. One, you're going to run through the certification study guide. That's on the student portal. It's got a lot in there. If you're not an experienced machine learning person, you're going to run through pretty much everything. If you are an experienced machine learning person, you're going to run through the things that you're gapped on. That's it. Once you get past all of the training, the expertise building, and the white papers, you're going to come to supplemental labs. That the link I gave you yesterday in particular has 4 sections on basically the SageMaker workshops, workshops.aws, and a bunch of other locations where you can get ML deep dives. Remember, you can find this stuff all over the internet, but they're usually centralized in those key locations: workshops.aws, Skill Builder, and the link I sent you around the SageMaker Immersion Workshop. Once you get past the expertise building, once you get past the supplemental labs and workshops and you're feeling pretty comfortable, then you're going to do the practice exams. You're going to do 2 of the review mode exams until you get 90%. Now, earlier, I think it was Keith, maybe somebody, I could be wrong, threw out other exams from Udemy. You could use those. Those would be great. I can't speak to the quality of them. I'm sure they're awesome. You're going to practice those until you can get a 90%, but you can do them one at a time. I don't care which 2 or 3 you do, but just do them until you've got them mastered. And you might say, well, Michael, isn't that memorizing the answer? Yeah, I mean, it is a trivia exam, so let's be clear, but I don't want you to just memorize the answer, right? That's overfitting. I want you to learn exactly why that answer is the right answer, why the other answers are wrong, and to know something about the algorithm, the parameter, the methodology, the encode, whatever it is, it's asking, right? I know you're like, but Michael, that's a huge ask. Well, guess what? I know, because data science isn't just about being an IT person. You've also got to learn a little bit about the math. You got to understand a little about the data. You got to understand a little about the domain. So you've got all these disciplines kind of coming together, right? So it's not easy. That's why I think at last count I saw there was only like, I want to say it's like 13,000, 12,000 something data scientists globally throughout the world. I found out, by the way, recently there's only 300 people in the out of Amazon that will teach data science, and that just isn't in Amazon. That's like globally. There's only 300 people in the world who will teach it for AWS. Right? There's only 13,000 data scientists globally as well. So it's like, I don't know how accurate that number is, but I know it's not a large percentage of the population. So just know that you're going to have to go through that study guide in depth, especially if this is a new discipline for you. Okay. All right. So that should give you a review. I saw by the way, to update the study guide. So I will repost that here in just a second. Actually, you know what? Let me just take a quick look. I mean, working throughout the world that I'm aware of, that there's about 13,000. Let's see, what was I searching for? Oh, the ML study guide. Hold on one second. Hold on. Here it is. This is the one that I wanted to send out. All right, here it is. Coming at you. This is the updated one. I'm going to get them to update the one that's out there with this one. It'll probably take a day or two though, just because, right, we won't get done till 5 and I got full class tomorrow. So I'm gonna try and send this to him tomorrow, but this contains the SageMaker workshop links, the AWS AI ML workshop links. This is the one that contains AWS samples if you back up. And then this is the one that has the data science book, okay? So what did Van Wilder say? Write that down. Good. All right, let's tackle some questions then. We're only do this for maybe like 20 minutes and then we're gonna stop. Okay, so a cybersecurity company is working on a system that detects fraudulent transactions. They want a solution that will assign anomaly scores to malicious records as they are being streamed in real time. What? Wasn't somebody asking about doing real time evaluation earlier? Companies ask for a machine learning specialist advice on ways to implement a solution without too much operational overhead using AWS services. So they don't want to orchestrate a whole like multi-stage setup, right? The results are going to be stored in S3's data lake for post-processing and analysis. What should the specialist recommend? Does anyone remember the name of the Kinesis feature I said would actually allow you to run algorithms? And if you're going to run algorithms, which algorithm are you going to use to detect anomalies? That's right, James. Random cut forest. Now, here's the other question. Can Kinesis Data Firehose write directly to SageMaker? Someone answer that for me. Can Kinesis talk directly to SageMaker? The answer is no. Now, does that mean that data analytics can't run algos? No, it can run algos. Not all of them, but some of them. All right, so I saw that Keith put D, but James kind of gave us the answer, right? By putting random cut forest, right? We're not going to use KNN for that. Although, hold on, EMR, that wouldn't work anyway. We could use KNN. Data Firehose to go to hotspots, no. Data Firehose to, nope. And then data streams into Kinesis Data Analytics. Yep, you sure can. You can do that. That should be a pretty clear answer, right? Anyone, this, right? The EMRs, by the way, is going to have too much operational overhead, even if it did work. Hotspots isn't going to work for what we're wanting to do. And you can't put Firehose data, right? Well, let me rephrase that. You can't actually put Firehose data into S3, and then you could use SageMaker's random cut forest to detect anomalies. You can't actually do that. That is a valid answer. That has more operational overhead than you actually just doing it straight in Kinesis Data Analytics. So technically that's a correct answer, number 3. But remember, they asked you very specifically to basically reduce operational management. And that's a good point, Keith. It is not real time. When you dump it in S3, it's not real time. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Hotspots just detects dense regions in your data, right? It's not gonna work anyway, right? SageMaker requires more operational management than data analytics. That's valid, right? KNN algorithms just used for classification or regression problems. Not gonna be used for that. All right. Anyone have any questions on that? What? Hold on one second. Let's check that out. Does someone else not have access to this doc? Oh God, when did that change? I'm sorry. Let's try that link again. I think I must have changed that on accident earlier. There we go. That should work. Let me know if that doesn't work. I'll fix it right away. Okay. We're doing an exploratory data analysis. Thank you, Matthew, for confirming. Perfect. We're preparing a data set to train a predictive model. We want to project aims to project whether an applicant is eligible or not for a personal loan. Data set contains numerical, categorical, and ordinal data features to increase prediction accuracy. The specialist wants to transform the categoricals into numerical values. I mean, what's that really the only transform there, right? Okay. I mean, that one seems pretty obvious. Notice, by the way, that they're talking about glue, like Databrew, right? Which you can use recipe actions to perform transformations. So one hot encoding could happen actually there, right? Just as part of a pipeline, right, coming in. So one hot encoding though is exactly what, and I think we talked about this even today, right? Basically adds more columns, right, based on the categories that you've defined. The rest of these don't make any sense. Feature scaling is used for normalizing features within a fixed range, right? Dimensional reduction is basically going to reduce the number of highly correlated features in data. And of course, date formatting is just changing format. So Okay. Web application has machine learning predict the outcome of matches for top basketball leagues. The application uses SageMaker to access the model. In preparation for an upcoming playoff series, the backend engineer must increase the availability of the application's underlying machine learning component. First of all, is this in production or not? Is this in production? How do you know it's in production? What keyword is there that tells you that this has been deployed into production? True. Endpoint, right? They deployed it behind an endpoint, so it's actually ready to go. I'm not saying that you wouldn't necessarily do a training model and deploy it behind an endpoint and like test it and all that other stuff. But if it's behind an endpoint, it's going to scale at that point in time. You might have to do some additional things, but it's there, right? So if you wanted to increase availability of the machine learning component, which of these do you think you would do? Amazon, as a general rule of thumb, is going to prefer that you horizontally scale. They're going to prefer that you add instances. There are very few cases, mainly involving SQL databases or RDBMSs, where they're going to ask you to increase the instances size. Neo, by the way, is what? What is Neo for? Not just, it is actually, Matthew, that's valid. It is primarily for IoT, but it's basically optimizing your model deployments, right? The actual compilers and runtimes, right? For exactly IoT and resource constrained devices. You wouldn't create another SageMaker endpoint, by the way, because that's not necessary. You can just add additional instances to the endpoint that you have. So anybody need any clarification on that, or does that make sense? Excuse me. Just randomly click over to that. Oh yeah, it is obviously more cost effective as well, right? So they talk about that, about why it's more cost effective to do it that way. Okay, we have a video conference application that's going to allow users like me to choose silly backgrounds and still be able to see the person. Machine learning specialist for this company was asked to train a model that can identify the shape of a person in real time as they make goofy things. What do you use for that, right? What do you use to do a pixel by pixel shape of the person in real time? If you're like, Michael, I had no idea. That's something you want to memorize, right? You want to know this about semantic segmentation. Good. I see that most of you put C. Okay. Is that wing cut off? Anyway, moving on. Any questions about that? Object-to-vect, by the way, is an NLP algorithm, right? Doesn't work on images, so that's not going to work, right? Oh, excuse me. Object detection is like image classification, but basically it's going to use a bounding box to identify objects, right? And the image classification, right, it's just going to, if image of a cat, it's going to tell you what's in it, right? We'll be able to determine its shape. It's just an identifying algorithm. Okay. We're using a combination of EMR and AWS's data pipeline for its transformation pipeline. Teams looking for an alternative that requires less operational management. The new pipeline is going to support non-critical workloads with ML training data coming from custom sources. Which method is the most effective for building the solution? So the goal here is they want less operational management. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing, but they want something that requires less overhead, less management to execute. So let me ask you this. First of all, what's going to require more operational overhead, Redshift or S3? And I see your answers. Yeah, Redshift is going to require more operational overhead. So that's off the table. So those first two answers are gone. What's going to require more operational overhead, doing an ETL job using Glue or a Lambda function? I think you guys all answered that, right? A lot of you said Glue already. So I don't know, Keith. It's not really arguable, actually. Way more overhead for Lambda than it is for Glue. Now, of course, you say that. I say that, well, it's not really arguable. But if you're not familiar with Glue, then Lambda is just going to be, right? Sacre bleu, Keith. Did you just say that Lambda was just some Python code? I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Ostensibly, that's how people think about it, right? You do have to answer some questions. You have to size it appropriately. There's some configuration, right? It is not as easy to use as Glue is. But it's not as hard as containers. So okay, hopefully that exclusion is clear. And and actually that's, Matthew, probably the better point for the whole thing is that what if your data job takes longer than 15 minutes? Lambda's not going to really work for you. Now, did they say that? No. But yeah, that is another constraint.
So for someone who's not familiar with all of AWS's services, Lambda is an AWS service. We're not talking about a Python Lambda function, right?
Yeah. Lambda is the serverless service. So it's a way of hosting code, but you don't see any of the servers. So virtual machines is EC2, containers is ECS, EKS, serverless, the highest level of abstraction is Lambda, AWS Lambda. The only catch with Lambda, because it's really functions as a service, is it has a 900-second execution limit. So if you want to run it longer than that, you have to chain multiple functions together, either through an event-driven architecture or use AWS step functions to orchestrate a state machine for various Lambda executions. Okay, so yeah, Joel, I would say, Joel, just to be clear, like you probably want to at least review the cloud practitioner material, because they are going to challenge you with like knowledge of this kind of stuff. The cloud practitioner material, sorry, clarify that. Well, Keith, to say this is that ETL can be done in Lambda, but only if it's really short, quick jobs. Again, if you run over 15, if you run over 15 minutes, you're gonna have a problem. Plus, orchestrating that as a trigger-based scenario or event-based scenario is actually easier with ETL with S3 as the source than it is just with Lambda. So Lambda has predefined jobs also for most of these. So there's the other reason. So that is an exam kind of perspective. In the real world, you could figure it out, right? Okay. By the way, I want you to just read the first sentence. We have an on-premise MSQL database that needs to be replicated in Amazon S3 as CSV files. Stop. Just stop. All right. You don't even really need to read the rest of it, but you should read the rest of it in case there's a qualifier, like we're actually not going to use the database and that sentence is just there to throw you off. But just know immediately when I read that sentence, I'm like, oh, they're probably talking about DMS, right? Once the data has been fully copied, ongoing changes to the database should be continually streamed into the S3 bucket. Still talking about DMS. And then SageMaker's pipe mode, input mode will be used to fetch data sets from S3 during the training model. I don't really care because once it's in S3, it was already there, right? So it didn't matter. You can run pipe mode, file mode, right? Didn't matter to me. It's in S3 at that point. So data pipeline isn't going to do on-premise. Kinesis Data Firehose is, I don't think it's really going to talk to a database, honestly. Glue, I think Glue will talk to a database either. DMS is mainly it. That last glue thing, I don't remember that as far as like, I don't even, I think I've tried to hook it into a database. Data pipeline and DMS are definitely going to talk to databases. Kinesis is for like someone who produces real-time streaming data, like either a JavaScript production, like off of like a clicks on a website or IoT data coming in, hits a Kinesis stream and it gets picked up. So that's not really built for data. And you can dump from Kinesis Data Firehose into a database, but I don't think it sources from a database. Someone has to put the data on Kinesis. Glue is the only one where like, it could be sourced against a database, but it's definitely not going to do on-premise, so it doesn't matter. DMS is the only answer for on-premise. Which I made all that big hub when I was like wrong, right? Data pipeline does not support on-premise, right? Yeah, okay, so you can run Glue, the metadata crawlers on databases, but it's going to be harder to do it with Glue. So I guess it actually can like pull off data, but catalog data makes sense to me. Pulling the actual data like that, I don't know that does. I'll have to look that up actually. Regardless, again, on-premise clarifies that. Okay. 4 more minutes, we're going to switch over. ML specialist training a regression model to predict house prices in different location. Great. They want to test the quality of the test data by identifying whether the model is underestimating or overestimating the target price. For a regression, what are we going to use? If we're going to do underestimation or overestimation, like we want to see basically whether or not it's going to underestimate or overestimate against the target price, right? We're going to lose that with RMSE. So most likely we're going to have to use residual plots, right? That's right, you lose the negative because you square it. So yeah, either you like if you want to evaluate the underestimating, the overestimating, you're gonna have to visualize it, right? So this is where the residual plot's gonna come in. I gotta tell you, Matthew, like that's an incredible reminder. You can't tell me any questions I've missed because I let my, I know it's gonna sound like weird, but like I let my bias jump the gun, right? I tend to be like an aggregator where I just like read the words whole and I don't really like put my eyeballs in an entire sentence. I usually, when I take an exam, I force myself to slow down and be like, okay, this is where this gets me in trouble, by the way, with the online testing, because I start talking to myself and they're like, Mr. Forrester, can you please stop talking to yourself? Right. So anyway, in this case, it says, I really want to test the quality of the test data by identifying whether the model is underestimating or overestimating the target price. Technically, this is the only answer. Is that visualization. Okay. Last but not least, an ML specialist is approximating a model that will fit into a parabolic target function. The specialist keeps getting wrong prediction, and the trained model appears linear to have a linear function when plotted. Some of you jumped right on that. Think about our visualization around, to say this, overfitting, underfitting, where it just looks linear, right? Versus the slight curve that you get when it's like pretty good, right? Visualize that for a second. So you remember this? Remember, it's also if it's performing poorly as subsequence just for the training data, it doesn't have enough of the understanding. It doesn't have enough to build the relation. It's not able to actually like form an analysis or form a relationship or to understand the pattern. It's underfitting, right? So the model would look squiggly if it was overfitting, right? If the model had a high variance, the model could be overfitting, which is not the case in this scenario, right? If the model is balanced, then you kind of like see this like cool, like smooth slope, right? In between the numbers. Not a good fit. Okay. All right, let's stop there. All right, any questions about how to use this? Any links that you don't have at this point in time? Okay. Alexa, disable mic. Thank you. All right. Pardon me 1 second. Alexa, stop. Okay. If no other questions, then we're going to move on to the final stage, is closing, and I'll let you go.